you ever been absolutely sure you remember something, like going to a party or having a conversation with someone, only to find out later that it never actually happened? I don't mean forgetting a couple of details. I'm talking about an entire event that you could remember vividly, but in reality, it was all made up by your brain. This is not just you being forgetful. These are known as false memories. They're completely fictional events that, for some reason, your brain decided to construct and add to your personal history as if they were real. Now, would you believe it if I told you that social media could be planting these false memories and even creating new quote-unquote memories out of thin air? Some dangerous groups have not only discovered this, but they're actively taking advantage of this little glitch in our brain. Why? Yeah, it's probably for money or power. It usually is. But the other reasons are way scarier than you'd imagine. The human brain is an extremely interesting organ. It's malleable by nature, and it allows us to constantly gather information, learn new things, and shape our thoughts. Similar to how we're breathing right now. Brain does all of this without us even realizing it. So you have to wonder, can you trust that the thoughts and memories in your brain are absolutely 100% always your own? Back in 1989, the small town of Beatrice, Nebraska was shaken up by a notorious murder case. A 68-year-old widow was suffocated in her apartment, yet the police couldn't find any viable leads for who may have done it until one day, 6 different people were arrested, charged, and convicted of the crime. 5 of those 6 people took plea deals, admitting to their crimes after being overwhelmed by their own guilt. A few of them went into a gory description about the details of the murder scene and how they took part. There was only one small problem. Not a single one of these suspects committed the crime. Not one. We only know this because DNA evidence eventually exonerated all 6 people. It became the largest case of DNA exoneration involving false memory in US judicial history. It wasn't that these people were just lying for attention or covering up for someone else. They genuinely believed they had participated in this murder because their memories had been reconstructed through suggestive interrogation techniques. Elizabeth Loftus, a professor of social ecology, once said that the memory is born anew every day. Our brains aren't just simple recording devices. We aren't able to store perfect copies of events in our head that can just be replayed later like a movie. Instead, we are continuously rebuilding our memories each time we recall them, which makes them highly vulnerable to outside influence and even complete manipulation. In fact, one of Loftus's studies actually demonstrated just how nauseatingly easy it is to plant an artificial memory in people's minds. Through just 3 suggestive interviews, she got 70% of participants to remember crimes that they never actually committed. Just like the Nebraska murder case, they were able to provide vivid, colorful details involving emotions and sensory descriptions, all for events that never happened. What's really concerning is that those with false memories have no way to tell the difference between real and fake thoughts. They feel absolutely real to those affected. The emotions, the sensory details, all of it feels genuine to the point that their brain has essentially rewritten their personal history. But how exactly does this happen? While scientists aren't absolutely positive, one idea is that it's caused by something called the source monitoring framework. Basically, it says that our brains use 2 systems to figure out where our memories come from. The first is quick, automatic, and makes snap judgments based on things like what we saw or heard. The second is slower, more thoughtful, and tries to decide if something feels right or not. When one of those brain systems messes up, that could result in a falsified memory. You might end up confusing something you imagined with the details of real events that happened in the past. Another explanation is the fuzzy trace theory. It argues that our memories are stored in 2 different ways, as gist traces and verbatim traces. Like their name suggests, gist traces involve basic ideas and feelings, while verbatim traces involve exact, precise details. When our brain fails to remember the verbatim traces, it tends to try filling those gaps with what seems most likely or believable at the time. But how does this have anything to do with social media? Think about how information reaches you in the current day. In the past, people usually got most of their information from news outlets that operated with the same limited set of sources. Everyone saw the same evening news broadcast and read the same newspaper. What we had was an environment of shared information that established a common understanding of reality, but that world is long gone. Today, the way we collect information is extremely fragmented. Social media feeds are uniquely tailored to you as an individual. The content that's shown to you is curated by complex algorithms with the single goal of maximizing your attention and engagement. This level of personalization creates something called filter bubbles. They're fairly similar to echo chambers in that you only come across content that confirms your existing thoughts and beliefs. These filter bubbles aren't just dividing politically, they're literally giving millions of people completely different memories of the same events. And with the incredibly rapid improvements to AI image and video generation, that problem is only going to get worse. Essentially, social media takes all of these memory distortion techniques and mashes them together. Then it adds an emotional aspect to the combination. And when we're constantly served content that the algorithm believes is best suited for us, we believe that everyone is agreeing with our own beliefs and we're able to trust more easily. When you smash all of this together, it creates a perfect storm for messing with our memories on a massive scale. In a 2013 study by Stephen Frenda, he and his team studied over 5,000 individuals and found that they tend to remember fake political events, especially when those events aligned with what they already believed. Liberals were more likely to remember George W. Bush hanging out with a baseball star during Hurricane Katrina, which never happened. And conservatives were more likely to remember Barack Obama shaking hands with the Iranian president, also never happened. During a larger analysis from Cambridge University in 2024, 13 different studies were reviewed. They found that nearly 40% of people ended up with at least one false memory after seeing fake news. And on average, people believed about 22% of the fake stories they were shown. Even crazier, when they looked at the situations that involved false beliefs specifically, meaning accepting something that happened without necessarily remembering it, the numbers jumped to 60% of participants believing at least one fake news story. Still, these studies are done in a controlled environment, so when you introduce the chaos of social media to the mix, it becomes considerably more dangerous. Because in the social media landscape, suggestive media is being wrapped up with social consensus cues, aka mob mentality, and making it even more difficult to distinguish from reality. When your friends, family members, or favorite creators are sharing and engaging with content, you reflexively give that content more credibility. This social reinforcement can make fake and suggestive media even more potent than it would be in isolation. It's no secret that in the US, political divisions have gotten significantly more noticeable and aggressive. An NPR survey from 2022 found that 64% of Americans think democracy is under an existential crisis and could eventually fail. Another survey from Quinnipiac University showed that 76% of participants believe political divide and chaos is the biggest threat to the US. The biggest contributing factor is misinformation, especially when it affects memories. Since people are more likely to accept false information as true when it already aligns with their beliefs, what results is a constantly growing divide. Take what happened after the 2020 election, for example. Though several investigations found no evidence of widespread fraud, a significant amount of the population still believed it existed. There were even claims from this group about remembering specific things that never actually happened during the election. What's extremely concerning is that when false memories like these successfully land into a person's mind, it's really difficult to fix. Like I said earlier, people agree more easily to things that align with what they already believe in. This means the opposite is true as well. They're much more closed off to information that doesn't align with their perspective. Showing someone facts doesn't usually help, because to them, it doesn't feel like you're challenging an opinion. It feels like you're telling them their own mind is wrong. When people can't even agree on what's real, it's almost impossible to have even a productive conversation, let alone unify a divided population. The judicial system isn't immune to this problem either. The phenomenon of false memories has caused significant damage there as well. The case I mentioned earlier about the murder in Beatrice, Nebraska is not an isolated, rare incident. For decades, police and investigators have used specific techniques to solve crimes. But sometimes, those same methods can accidentally, or even maliciously, plant false memories in the minds of both suspects and witnesses. Let's take Ada Joanne Taylor as an example. She was one of the 6 murder suspects that confessed to the crime in Nebraska. She didn't just confess to being part of the murder, she actually suffered physical flashbacks, saying she was able to feel the texture of the pillow she thought she used to suffocate the victim. Even after the DNA evidence proved she was innocent, those false memories stuck with her for years. Even still, the way police interrogate people hasn't changed much since then. A lot of the same tactics that led to those false confessions are still being used today. Officers will describe the crime in detail, push suspects to imagine how they might have done it, and treat any confusion or memory gaps as indicators of guilt. And now, a new layer of complexity is added with social media. Before anyone steps into a courtroom, headlines, videos, comments, and theories have already made their rounds online. So potential jurors, witnesses, and even suspects are soaking in all of this information without even realizing it can incorrectly shape how they remember things. By the time a witness is called to the stand, their brain has already been filled with other people's versions and opinions of the story. Our brains simply cannot distinguish between what is objectively true and what is a falsified memory. For centuries, controlling the story of the past has been a key technique to hold on to power. But today, the development of tech and social platforms has multiplied all of the different layers involved. It's never been easier to manipulate memories and beliefs on such a large scale. If we can't even agree on what happened in the past, how are we supposed to agree on what should happen next?